friends, it's Teresa and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about an arc that I received from NetGalley, so thank you very much NetGalley for giving me access to this arc. The book is already out. I think it came out March 19th, I want to say, and that is The Last Bloodcarver by Vanessa Lay. I do have a lot of good things to say about this book. It was a pleasant surprise for me, but if you enjoy these videos, please subscribe and like and comment if this video at all impacted your way of like wanting to read the book, or maybe it inspired you to read the book, or if you have any more suggestions for videos in the future for me. But until then, let's get into the video. Alright, so The Last Bloodcarver by Vanessa Lay is a YA high fantasy set in a Vietnamese-inspired world. It's following Nika, who is the last of her kind, the last Bloodcarver. Now, she has been hiding in the city, trying to get by. She kind of has been hiding herself as a healer, and after what is a sham of a medical appointment, she is then captured by some thugs to throw her into the underground. While in the underground, she is then purchased by a very high aristocratic family who hires her based on her healing powers in hopes they'll heal the last witness to a murder, or a suspected murder, of a family member. Now, as Nika gets closer and closer into this world and tries to find tries to heal this person, she kind of comes to a weird headway. Does she lean into the fact that she is this healer, this thing that she's always wanted to become, or does she end up accepting this role of a monster that everyone in this world of Thumas has labeled her to be? But moving on to my first thoughts. My first thought about this book is that I had no first thoughts. Like I said, this book came... Thank you. Like I said, this book did come to me as a pretty big surprise. My biggest takeaways from the synopsis when I was reading it was that it involved blood magic mixed with science, and I am a huge fan of blood magic. I think that it needs to be done more, and it needs to be done well. And the fact that it's a Southeast Asian author, I was like, this is going to be a very good mix for me. And also the cover is just really, really pretty. Look at it. Trigger warning says this book has quite a lot of them. It is a pretty dark, it has a lot of dark contents in it. One of them is being blood, gore. There's a lot of violence in this one, physical and gun violence. Death of parents. It happens not in the timeline of the book, but it is mentioned in the book. Then we have violence and abuse toward and mistreatments of animals. However, it does happen toward the beginning of the book and isn't really shown much throughout the rest of the book. I don't think so anyway. Or I don't remember if it was shown in the end of the book. I vividly remember the beginning of the book with a lot of the animal mishandling, not so much the end. So if that is something that you were not a fan of, stay away. And finally, there is medical trauma in this book as well. Just a heads up. So I guess I'll just hop into it. I'll talk about the pacing first. I felt like this was kind of one of the weaker points of the book. I feel like the pacing felt really odd at times, which kind of then made the presentation and the development of the plot a little odd. I feel like we didn't get to kind of the crux of the whodunit mystery aspect until way later in the book, which did make the book feel a little slower in some points, especially in my eyes. It definitely felt clunky, and I feel like it struggled to get to the point of the whole whodunit situation, and there were a lot of fill-in chapters to try and develop the intrigue and I guess like the magic system, which was fine. I didn't mind it, but it was definitely feeling a little clunky at times, and I definitely felt like there could have been scenes that have been cut just to give the book some brevity and maybe put a focus on like the main point of the plot. Because I definitely feel like the main point of the plot wasn't a thing until kind of like midway till almost the end of the book. So just keep that in mind if you're going to pick it up. It is definitely a slower paced book, and it does feel a little clunky at times. Moving on to my thoughts about the characters. I love this trend where creators of color create characters of color who love their culture and their magic system so much. I've only had it happen twice so far, which is To Shape a Dragon's Breath and now The Last Bloodcarver, which means Nika as a character was so fantastic to read. I love that she had this innate love for her culture, her magic, that is ultimately a lost art because of it. This very oppressive system that came in and quite literally wrecked everything that her family had known for years, causing them to move to Thumas and hide who they were because they're not seen as a healer but a monster. I loved seeing her anger at her people's situations, that they were meant to be more than this. She was meant to be more than this, but here she is quite literally slumming it and trying to just break even every day and just try to feed herself, which is something that would not have happened had colonialism not come in and just like ruined everything. And then there's her grief for her family and her culture and the way of life that she should have been able to live, that just makes her feel like a well-rounded character. I love seeing her touch upon these things, and they'll continue to be touched upon throughout the book because they are like a really big part of her. They're a huge part of why she is the way she is, why she's had to live the way she has in the past. Just everything about it was just so heartbreaking, but also just so good. And I also really, what's the word I'm looking for? Empathized and related to her like longing to find a place to belong. It's very much written for the diaspora. Having her family have to flee from their hometown to this place where she doesn't really quite belong. She doesn't have a family both physically and emotionally. So she's just a lonely little like leaf floating in a river, I suppose, without really much of support. And it was really interesting to see her kind of build that support throughout the novel and build this place of longing for her and find a place where she felt comfortable and she felt good. And the way that she gets angry and upset at the thought of that having to leave that was just also just so heartbreaking for me. And I really related to her character, and I felt that she was so complex and so good, and I just wanted the best for her. She deserves so much better than what she got. But I felt like Nika was a really good medium for the plot and the world, and I loved, much like how I really enjoyed what's her butt? Anekus from To Shape a Dragon's Breath. I really loved to see how everyone was kind of growing because Nika was such a strong pillar in this world, in this in her like love for her culture. It's just such a, I love it. I love it so much to see characters who love themselves and their cultures wholeheartedly, even when the entire world is telling them, no, you're kind of not great. It's so nice to see. The other weakness that I found in this book was definitely the side characters. While I loved Trin and Dao and Mimi, I really did feel like they were very flat. Like, I love to see their budding relationship with Nika. I love to see the kind of familial love that they were beginning to have for her, but I definitely do feel like they felt kind of a little flat and wasn't as well developed as Kochin and Nika, because they are the main characters. I did want to see more of them. I wanted to see them develop their personalities and their values a little more. I wanted just to see more of this trio, because you could tell that they made such an impact on Nika, but they weren't very like I guess like they weren't a prominent feature in the book. Like, even though they're supposed to be they're the reason why Nika is in this position in the first place. I definitely do want to see this trio in the next book and see how they show up for Nika and how this all transpires. I think it'll be very interesting. The writing style was also something that I really enjoyed. I feel like it was imaginative, it was descriptive, and flowed really well. I didn't feel like there was too much information or there was a lack of information. The prose was just absolutely stunning, and I love to see how it was described. Like, everything scientific was described from a magical standpoint, to see when Nika heals someone, to see how she quite literally goes into the body and heals the small bits that are ailing the person, or how she heals the wounds on the witness, how she heals herself and how she has to heal herself was like, wow, kind of disturbing at times. I really did enjoy the kind of the how it was described. It was very clinical, but also very magical at the same time, if that makes sense. And I just really enjoyed to see how that was all going to pan out and focus. And I just love the writing style. It was very easy to get lost into. I didn't feel like there were moments where the writing or the dialogue really took me out. It all felt very cohesive to the time period that she was trying to attempt, and to the knowledge the characters would have had about science, about magic, and like the culture, because language is also shaped by the culture. I also really enjoyed to see that. So I felt like the writing style was very cohesive and very fun to read, and it was very good to read. I really enjoyed it. The next part of this story are the themes. The themes are definitely a strong point in this. I think Vanessa Lay has a very does a very good job of creating themes and like tackling themes such as grief, identity, how trauma travels down generations, what it means to be a healer, I guess that would be another theme, and then colonialism. I really saw a lot of those themes, especially with Nika being shaped by her grief so much. From the very get-go, we can see that Nika is very much racked with the guilt of not being able to save her mother. from her illness and not being strong enough to do that, and we get to see her mention it over and over. It's a big thing she has to tackle within herself. Like, is she a healer if she couldn't even save her own mother? How can she do this if she can't save her own mother? She is not as strong as she should be because she was not able to save her own mother. And we get to see that struggle throughout the book and get to see how Nika slowly overcomes this grief. And it's not because she's not weak, it's because she lacks the knowledge, because as a byproduct of colonialism, her entire culture and her way of like how her people live has completely been lost and has been completely like warped and shaped into something that isn't what it actually is. People see her as a monster instead of the healer that her people actually are. We also get to see generational trauma as a byproduct of colonialism. We get to see people have to hide who they are as a people. We get to see them have to hide their practices. One of the main character, his family no longer practices or passes down, and there's a really like heart-wrenching discussion about what they should be able to do, or how are they going to keep this culture and this magic alive if there's no one to pass it down to? What if their kids don't want to practice? What if they end up never having children? How are these things passed down, and how is this culture going to continue? And it's definitely like a loss, I think, a loss of culture and a loss of way of living because of colonialism, and it's a very big topic in this book. I think it was handled really, really well, and I definitely had moments where I got a little emotional just trying to think of the things that like cultures and people have lost because of how colonialism has impacted their very way of living, how it's impacted how people viewed their people, and how they've had to minimize and hide and do all the things just to survive. It's very emotional. I'm going to read off of my phone on this one because I'm not sure if this one's a theme exactly, but seeing the differences between, I guess, like a clinical healer versus like, I suppose like a holistic, that's a wrong thing, I guess. Seeing someone who only sees healing as, how do I word this without, oh, here we go. Okay, there we go. I guess it's like a difference of like what makes a healer almost, kind of in the sense that the antagonist views medical healing as like very clinical and detached. These are bodies that you have to heal, and you can pull things from certain bodies to make a new body, and it's just it's very like, it's like clinical and detached, and there's no care for the actual human that the body is harboring. Whereas Nika, being a hearthsooth or a bloodcarver, as people of Thumas like to create her as, sees the person and the body as one and the same. You have to heal the person in order to heal the body, and you just have to like, and it's like there's a lot of love and care that goes into learning what ails the body and learning how to make sure that it helps the person when you're healing, and it's just like a very nice like give and take. And it's definitely something I think is lost in like Western culture, is that Western culture really does like heal the symptoms and not the ailment for the sake of money. And it's all like it's a lot of instances it's very clinical and detached, and it's very obvious that it's kind of taking on this very Western view of it. So I don't know if that's a theme. It doesn't feel like a theme now that I've said it out loud and analyzed it, but take that as you will, because you know themes are supposed to be like overarching messages. I don't know if there's an overarching message. Moving on to my last point, and definitely the strongest aspect of this book for me, was the world building. The magic system was honestly my favorite. To learn about how this blood magic works, both from a magical and a scientific aspect, and how they work together, was honestly like a beautiful thing. We get to see Nika describe her magic to the reader, or at least what she knows of her magic to her reader, and as Nika learns about her magic, so does the reader. And it's a very fun like give and take, that it's almost like I know this, but I need to know more, and you will learn more with me. And I love seeing Nika learn about the practices that were lost to her because of the oppressive force that had come in and like colonized her people and like destroyed her way of living. I love seeing the like kind of give and takes of this magic system. It had capabilities, it had limitations, but it also importantly had room to grow. We learned that the limitations aren't inherent to the magic system, but the person conducting the magic, and if the person conducting the magic got a chance to learn more about it, then the magic had a chance to grow and expand and become something more, which I really did enjoy to see, and I thought it was fun. And it definitely is like something that I love seeing in magic systems, where there's like limitations, but there's still like, it's not like a hard, like, what am I doing? It's not like a hard, it's not a cage, but it's just like limiting because of the person's knowledge. I loved when things expand and progress. And I definitely do think that Vanessa Lay had done a really good job of combining magic and science with this system, and it does like there's a very, very nice balance between the two of them. One's not overpowering the other, and one's not like a smaller piece of the other. They're very much like, here's the balance that we need, and I think she met that really well. And my last point about the world building is that the world felt whole. Like, Thumas felt like a whole world that I could just go visit in, and I would, like, you know, see bits of it. You know, I'm not going to obviously see the entire city, but I'm going to see bits of the city. But I still have an understanding that the city itself exists outside of the bits that I've seen, if that makes sense. I feel like certain world building aspects nowadays, it's like, oh yeah, this bit is developed as heck, but everything else, it's like the Hex from Marvel, I guess, where like, oh yeah, wherever Wanda is, everything's moving and bustling and grooving, and then the further you get away from Wanda, the world is like frozen and stuck, and there's no movement and like function outside of that. Best way I could describe it, almost, like, it definitely feels like Vanessa Lay took the time to develop the world in its entirety, and while we're not seeing the entire part of it, I, as a reader, can trust that whatever aspect that we move into in this world, Vanessa has developed herself, and it will feel developed regardless of how quickly or how long we're in this section of the world. And then Vanessa herself trusts that her readers will be able to piece the world together, even though we're not entirely we're not seeing the entire world as we're reading. We're only seeing bits of it. Does that make sense? I think it makes sense. It sounds like it makes sense in my head, so I can only assume it'll make sense. It'll make sense to other people. Moving on to my final and overall thoughts, this is a 5 out of 5 stars for me. It definitely was a surprise. I had to stop reading this book about midway because I had to pick up another book for a video, and that book was a library book, so I couldn't like really teeter-totter between the two. I had to like pew. But I stopped reading the book for like a week and a half, and I still felt like I understood the world and I understood what was happening even after that week and a half break, and I really did enjoy this book a lot. Like I said, definitely a surprise for this year for me. I wasn't anticipating to love this book as much as I did. The book was heartbreaking from beginning to end. From learning about Nika's past and her love of her culture but lack of knowledge to continue it, to the ending that I knew was going to happen to someone, just not the one that it happened to. It's fine. I cannot wait for the sequel and the final to this duology. I already have it on my want to read, and I think it comes out next March 2025. So I need it yesterday, but I'm also willing to wait however long it takes for Vanessa Lay to create this beautiful world and finish this duology in the way that she wants to and needs to. I highly recommend this book if you haven't already yet. I definitely will be buying my own physical copy the next time I'm at the store. But that is it for all of my thoughts on The Last Bloodcarver by Vanessa Lay. If you have any books you want to recommend for me to do reviews or vlogs on, let me know in the comments. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you guys. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.